gorilla stomping in a zoo. Check the vocals, animals gather right. Boom.
Hello everybody, and welcome back for another episode of the Chicken Coop build series. So, in this episode, we're getting closer to a lot of the finer and finishing details of the coop. So while we're getting closer to that, we still have this nesting box to finish up, and we're going to be getting to that during this episode. In particular, we need to apply some plywood, probably brainstorm a little bit on how we're going to do the lid. But before we get to that, I want to start some painting as well. So I'm going to be painting inside the coop, just going with a regular flat white, and I want to get that started so that while we're working on the nesting box, that paint has some extra time to dry. Because once the inside is painted, and more than likely for next episode, I'm going to be painting up some trim and applying the trim along the inside as well. So I kind of want everything dry before I start putting that trim on. Alright, so with all that said, I think we're ready to dive in here. I'm going to begin by doing the painting, and like I say, while we're working on the nesting box, the inside paint can start drying and potentially give me time to do a second coat before I finish up tonight, but I'm not going to get ahead of myself and assume that that's going to happen. Alright, so welcome back. I'm glad you're all here. I hope you're enjoying the series so far. And before we start, if you want to hit that thumbs up, hit a subscribe, leave a comment below on how you're enjoying the series so far. All that goes a long way to supporting the channel, and I appreciate everything you guys do. Alright, let's get into some painting. So when it comes to painting the chicken coop, what I've picked up here is just some basic Home Depot Bear brand paint and primer in one. It was basically the cheapest one on the shelf, to be honest with you. And this is an exterior flat. So we should be good there as far as exterior goes. And to be honest, there's not much else on there, only non-reflective finish for walls and siding. Alright, so there's nothing fancy here. There was other ones there. They were stain resistant, this and that resistant. But you were talking like 50% more for one of those kind of premium paints, we'll say. I just needed some white, and I also got a exterior color as well done in the same, just obviously using this as a base, and you'll see that in the near future as well. So I've given this a little shake off camera, so we're going to get this opened up. Alright, I don't have anything fancy in the way of opening paint. Now, my wife would probably assume otherwise. She likes to say I have a tool for everything, which is not far from the truth. But as far as opening paint goes, this is the basics. So it's a very thick, creamy looking paint. I don't know if you guys can see. It's almost like marshmallow fluff, the way that looks. And it's very thick. Now I haven't painted with exterior paint, possibly never, to be honest with you. I'm usually dealing with water paints, so it's definitely a different consistency than I'm used to with paints. Hopefully my rollers and everything will take this okay. But at least it looks like once it's on the wall, it's going to stay there. It's like mixing up a bucket of glue. Alright, so I'll just lay my stir stick in the pan. And I just got a disposable plastic pan. It's good enough for me. Nothing too fancy. And you'll see the consistency of this now as I pour it, I would think. Very heavy thud as it hit the tray. I'll start off with that much. Hopefully that's enough. More than likely it's not enough, but I should have said hopefully it's not too much. I'll get some shop towel and clean that up a little bit and get the lid back on. Alright, so now with that sealed up for now, I'll get a roller put on here. Like I say, there's nothing fancy about any of this stuff. This is pretty much most of the cheapest options that they had at Home Depot. Alright, simple as that. Roller's on, ready to go. And a brush. And it's kind of ridiculous how much brushes cost. And for anyone who's bought a brush, I'm sure you know, you're looking at almost 20 bucks for a brush. And I got an angled brush to be able to cut in to any corners okay. Alright, so I'm going to begin with the tray and a brush and start cutting in along any edges. And we'll head over to the Coop now and begin that. So when it comes to the painting, I figure I'm probably going to just begin at the top and work my way down. We'll see how that works out for me. So with the first wall finished in the back, I figured I'd stop now and reflect on how that went. And what can I say? I'm hopefully pessimistic is how I feel about it so far. And the reason I'm hopefully pessimistic is that the base, or the paint, I'm questioning if maybe I did something wrong when I bought it. I'm wondering if maybe that's just a base with not even white in it. I don't know if that's a thing. I don't have a lot of experience with paint and painting or buying paint, and I got myself questioning now on if I was supposed to get the Home Depot employee to actually add white. I figured that if you buy it off the shelf, it's just white and it's ready to go, right? But I'm questioning now if maybe I was supposed to get them to top that up with more white pigment, because it's going on quite transparent, and I don't think it's supposed to go on transparent, is it? Like, I'm not familiar enough with it to know. So I'm going to stop for a second. I'm going to read the can and just see if I can figure out if maybe I was supposed to get them to actually add more white pigment to it. Because it's kind of going on almost like school glue, you know, like wood glue, where it's just very sticky, creamy, and then it's kind of drying clear. And even in some spots where I went back over with a second coat, it's still ending up clear again. And I was kind of hoping for more of a straight up white finish, so I'm starting to lean towards the possibility that all I got here is just base. Now, would I go so far as to go back and get them to add some white to it? If that's the case, I'm not 100% sure. The transparent finish is kind of nice as well, and it doesn't really bother me too much. So as long as the protective coating is there, I'm not too worried. The only thing comes when I do outside trim, I want a nice bright white. So for that reason, I would need a nice white pigment to be really shining through. And I'm thinking that I probably was supposed to have white added to it, but I'll figure that out. So yeah, I just wanted to take you guys aside for a second and review this first wall. I finished it off with just a brush, because with the 2 windows plus the clean outdoor and the 2 corners and the eave peak and everything, it was just so many cracks and crevices to get. There was no point trying to use a roller with it, so that's why I finished the whole thing by hand with the brush. I'm gonna go have a look at that paint can and figure out. I probably just bought a base, but we'll see. So, after reading the can a little bit, exterior flat, deep base. So, I looked up with old Google pants, and as far as I can tell, the base needs white tint added. And to top all that off, you read the really fine print right here. Let's see if do not use without the addition of tinting colorants, which apparently includes white. I never knew you needed to tint it white if it's already white in the can. So that ends the painting adventure for tonight. There you go, learning lesson of the evening, folks. If you buy a base paint, it still needs tint even if it's white. So it looks like a trip to Home Depot is in my near future for tomorrow. So that kind of puts a showstopper on that one. I'm going to clean up that paint tray, just wipe it out with the with the shop towels and keep it in a usable condition, and find a plastic bag to wrap up my brush. At least we never got into the roller. That would have been another messy addition to this evening. Alright, so I'm just going to tidy up, put some things away, and what I'll do is we'll start working on the nesting box. And I think that should clue us up for this episode. What can you do? I told you I'm not a professional. Alright? You've been warned. At least if you're watching this video, you might learn from my mistakes, which is excellent. But making mistakes sucks. Alright, so with that said, tidy up time, and we'll get back and we'll be over at the nesting box. Now that we have that blunder behind us and moving forward, first thing we're going to do, get a nice piece of plywood to cover the front of the box here. So just measuring from the base up, we're looking at 16 and a quarter in height. Probably a little bit less actually, because we got this bevel coming down here. And I don't feel like beveling a piece of plywood, to be honest with you. So maybe if I just do 16 even, that should be a decent level. And then lengthwise, it's going to be 94 and a quarter. So 94 and a quarter by 16. And I think we should be okay with those measurements. I think we got something long enough. So begin by measuring that 94 and a quarter. Right there. And 94 and a quarter there. Get our level. There we are. So we got our cut line. Go ahead, rip that off. Then we'll go ahead and do our next measurement of 16. I'll make a few different 16 measurements down the board. And now I'll go get a straight edge. So now with the straight edge on, and I got the straight edge an inch and an eighth away from my desired cut line, because that's the width of the spacer on the skill saw. I'm just checking that all the way down. Inch and an eighth, we are good. And just to verify at the end, I'll do a quick little marking here. And that'll show me where my blade goes. And we'll go ahead and make the cut. And we are definitely in line. Alright, so with our cut made, we'll now try the tricky process of getting this mounted I'm going to get my clamps and see if those will help. So I'll try to square up one corner at least as best I can. Looks relatively good. Now, so with the ends, and to make sure it stays in line here, again, just use your same thing we did with the rafters. It looks good. Let's actually come up a little smidge. Alright, so I'm going to tack that in right there. So that's right where I want it. The clamp can come off. I'll go to the other side, do the same thing. So with this front sheet of plywood now on, there is a gap between this runner here and the one below, and I'll measure that because we're going to fill that with some rigid foam insulation as well, and that is 6 inches in width, and that runs the whole length. So I'll just take some 1.5 inch, because this is a 1.5 inch thick 2x4. So to come flush with that, I'll use my 1.5 inch foam, cut it in 6 inch wide pieces, and run it down the length of there, and we should be able to get that done relatively quickly. So how I'm going to do this, I'll just measure 6 inches. So I'm actually going to take this little groove off. So I'll go from here for 6 inches. Just a bit shy from getting 2 pieces out of this. At the 6 inch mark, make a little cut there. Do the same thing on the other side. Now, line those up at the level. I'm going to need a bit more blade on this one. Lined up good. Guess my blade is getting a little bit dull. It wants to tear instead of cut right now. So that should be enough of a score line. There we are. 6-inch piece, and now I'll take that groove off right here. It comes off pretty easy. Alright, so here's our first 6-inch long, not 6-inch long, 6-inch wide cut, and I'm going to put that in just on the inside, as long as we can fit it in there. So here's the area we're looking to get into. I'm just going to put that in flat, rotate it up. A little bit tight on one end, not a big deal, just trim it a smidge. There we go. So that wasn't so hard, and perfect fit. So I'll continue, probably 2 more pieces should do the length, and maybe a third, we'll see. A little bit more off. That's a very nice solid fit. So now that I've insulated the individual nesting boxes, we're at the end point here. Now this here is not as big a deal because it's kind of just a storage compartment, right? So if it's cool in the winter, it's not a big deal. But I'm thinking like down the road, if I decide to get, kind of fancy with things, I may want to have, say, a water supply for the chickens in this section that I don't want freezing, or something that I wanted in a semi-insulated area. So following suit, I will insulate this one in here as well. Now this is a full 3.5 inch cavity, so for that reason I'm going to see if I can fit a 2 inch and an 1.5 inch like I was thinking of doing with the ceiling inside. But for such a small area, I definitely do have enough material. I'm down to one little piece of the 1.5 that I should be able to split in half for the 2 ends. But I got lots of 2 inch, but that was too much for the ceiling inside. Okay, so now we got the main outside wall, we got the dividers insulated. We're going to do this. And then the nesting box needs some plywood over all this at that point in time. So what I'm going to do is do a measurement of this hole, which is 7.5 inches. So I'm going to cut a piece 7.5 by 14, and then I'll make the angle cut afterwards using the level. So I got my initial 7.5 inch wide piece cut. I'm going to say 14 inches on one side and 10.25 on the other. Okay, so I'll measure up 14 and I'll measure up 10.25 and cut a line between the two. Should be enough of a line to follow. There we are. Okay, let's see if it fits. The 14 at the top wasn't exactly 14, it would seem. I suppose that was probably 14.5 or something. Actually, yes, it was 14.5. That's okay. Lots of little scrap pieces, and I'll just stuff in the stuff into the space. Pieces like that are excellent for this purpose. There we are. Now, so let's see if a 1.5 inch piece will fit. Yes, it will. So I'm going to repeat that now for a 1.5 inch piece. Now that we have the nesting boxes all insulated and ready for plywood, it's time to create another form of friend like we've had in the past. That's right, a template. So we're looking at 10.25, say, for there. 10.25. 10.25. Alright, so we're looking at 10.25 wide by, that's all, 16 and 1/4. Alright, 10.25 by 16.25 is what we're going to begin with. And then we're going to start notching this kind of stuff out, and we'll trace that onto our template, cut that out, and then we'll be ready to mark that on all of our future pieces of plywood, which we're going to need 2, 4, 6, 8 pieces. Alright, 10.25 by 16.25. 16.25, yeah. So I'm just going to go and get some plywood that fit this dimension out of the scrap pile. So just to get started, I found some pieces that fit the dimensions we're looking at after. And this one, luckily enough, is already 10.25 wide, So I'm just going to do my 16 1/4 lengths onto it. Now we'll be able to cut one off, get a template made out of it, and we'll be good. So for making this template now, I'll put this down in the hole. Alright, so we mark the 1.5" plywood, or the 1.5" 2x4. I could probably do all this with measurements, to be honest. So we're looking at about 1 inch. Let's do 1 inch for safety. Square. We'll make that a reality. Same with this. So I'm just going to go cut this corner out real quick. We'll come back and see how that fits in. High, and it goes like so. Actually had a lot more play there. It's a good thing this is a template. It's designed to be changed. That should have only been 1 inch down. I assume it was. Yeah. Oh well, not a big deal. Yeah, probably like 1/4 inch difference. Not a big deal, like I say. Alright, so put this up against, trace down, like so. Go cut that. Alright, test fit. Lovely. So we could come up 1/4 inch here on the next piece we make, and I think we'll be golden. So I gotta make 7 more of those now. there's anything I can tell you this evening, is that it would have been very ambitious to think that I was going to paint the inside of this and do this nesting box work. It just would not have happened. So I got 8 dividers now put in. I put them in as I went because some of them needed little tweaks here and there, whether it was an 1/8 of an inch or something like that, you know. Nothing major. They're all pretty much the same. I don't need a lot of screws to hold these in place. Just enough, probably 3 per side. I could get away with less, of course. So that finishes up these divider walls, but we need one on the back here now where this forward part of insulation is. We need some block covers in there. So we'll measure that off. These may end up being different measurements, so I may have to do these individually. I've got 21 inches there by 21 by 12 3/4. See if I can find a piece that fits that portfolio. So we did one 12 3/4 by 21. Should be snug but good. I'll take a little smidge off, I think, just to make it easier. 1 down, 3 to go. Alright, so the only thing that can make this chicken coop any better is definitely some homegrown artwork from my daughter. So she was looking to draw a picture one day using her chalk paint, and I told her to grab this plywood, and anyway she did, and she's got this picture here. So what I'm going to do for that last nesting box storage area, I'm just going to measure out my measurements around that and cut out the piece there. So that's going to be 20 and a half by it's going to be perfect just to get the whole picture. 20 and a half by 18, or sorry, 12 and 6/8. 3/4. There we go, so this should frame that out nicely. Now I'll just get a straight edge right here. Try lines. Like so. I'll get that cut out and we'll put that into the storage bin. There we go. Just a little bit of artwork. We'll go put that inside the nesting box. Alright, so the final piece for the nesting box. Just might take a little bit off. Let's see. No, that's going fine. Absolutely perfect fit. Couldn't be any more perfect. So let's get this locked into place. So who would have thought when that day that I told her to grab some plywood and to draw a picture, that we'd have a house within a house with lots of love for these little chickens. I think we're doing all right. And there we are. Couldn't be any better. Nesting box is done, other than the lid. So that's awesome. And just like that, we're at the end of another episode. So this episode never exactly went to plan. The paint turned out to be a bit of a dud. But at the same time, there's no way, absolutely no way I would have had time to paint the inside and do the nesting box work. It's going on midnight here now. I've been out here probably going on 4 hours or so, and the nesting box is pretty much done with the exception of the lid. I may do a little bit of caulking around on the inside of that at some point, but for the most part everything there is done. I just got to brainstorm a little bit about how I'm going to do that lid to keep it from leaking water to the inside. So I've done a few searches online, noticed that it is a bit of an issue for different people. Some people take the front and do a flip down system on the front to get at the eggs. I wanted that top down storage compartment type of deal, so I'm going to have to deal with that and accommodate for rain and get the water to shed off it properly. So with that said, we'll call it an episode. I got to see about getting that paint fixed, get some white tint put into it. The lineups for Home Depot are absolutely atrocious at this point in time, and I actually waited in line for a good half hour or more at opening hour last time I went and picked up the paint. So, you know, if I'm up late tonight and I end up sleeping in tomorrow, it could be a long wait in the afternoon for me to get in with that paint and see if they can add some tint to it. But as we know now, that's going to be the project next episode. I'm going to have the paint. Whether I got to buy a new gallon of it, I hope not. I don't think so. I think they can fix it. But I do have like a good chunk of it gone, you know, going on a quarter of it already used. So I'm probably going to need 2 gallons by the time I'm done anyways, because that wood was just soaking it up. But maybe once the tint goes in it, it'll have a bit more bang for its buck, right? So yeah, with that said, let's clue it up there. We'll see you next time. But you know, I hope you're happy. I hope you're all healthy. Take care of each other. And peace out.